How's the Detroit Sports Podcast going?
This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
Shore Professional Baseball League invites you to a summer of food, fun, and baseball. The week starts with Thirsty Thursday, where drink specials abound. Each and every Friday presents Fireworks Spectacular. Saturdays feature live band entertainment for that concert-like experience. Sunday fun days are for the kids with their favorite cartoon characters and superheroes. Every game, kids run the bases, meet their favorite players, and contest their skills in the wiffle ball field and speed pitch machine. So if you're looking for food, fun, and baseball, come on to downtown Utica and make Jimmy John's Field your summer destination.
Hey everybody, this is Freddie Cohen of ESPN Radio. When I'm not talking about breaking news or breaking news on ESPN Radio, I'm always a fan and listen to the Detroit Sports Podcast, and so should you.
Who said this was the slowest week in sports? My goodness. Welcome, everybody, to the latest edition of Doc and Jock. I am the Doc, John McEnroe. Joining me, my cousin, Adam, the Jock Strozinski. What's up, cuz? Major NBA news.
Yeah, man. This is what makes doing this fun, is we come in, we have a show already laid out, we're ready to get in and start talking, and then news happens. Things break. And everything that we sat there and we put together the day before, the night before, hours before, just throw it all out the window. Set it all on fire, watch that thing turn into a giant bonfire and get smoky up and out of the woods and coming over and telling us how we can only prevent forest fires. Just let that bitch burn, because we've got huge news with Kawhi Leonard, San Antonio, Toronto. Absolutely crazy. And this is what I love. This is why I love doing this, is this is a challenge, right? We've got information kind of coming in bits and pieces as we're doing this, as we're sitting here, and we've got to kind of talk our way through it and make heads and tails out of it and really just break down who won this trade and what it means for our Detroit Pistons.
So tell me, who traded for who and who got the best end of the deal according to what you saw?
Well, it looks as though the San Antonio Spurs have given up Kawhi Leonard and Danny Green to Toronto for DeMar DeRozan, and I'm going to mess up this dude's last name. It's Jakob Poeltl, and they have a protected first-round draft pick. Now, that first-round draft pick in 2019, it's a top 20 pick. If for some reason Toronto finishes outside of the top 20, that pick in 2020 will then turn into 2 second-round picks for San Antonio. Looking at all of this, the best player in this entire trade is Kawhi Leonard.
So you're saying the San Antonio Spurs, when they talked and reached out to the Toronto Raptors, the marquee name coming back is DeMar DeRozan?
That's the centerpiece. That's the crown jewel in this.
This is bad.
Yeah, it's not good. Look, I like DeMar DeRozan. I think you like DeMar DeRozan. I think we both think DeMar DeRozan is a solid piece. I think he's a solid number 2 on any championship contending team. DeMar DeRozan as the guy who you're kind of starting this rebuild around in San Antonio, because that's what this is. Let's really discuss it for what it is. It's a rebuild in San Antonio. They had a long time where they were on the verge of being a dynasty or a top contending team. They were always very, very good. Whether they won the NBA championship or not, they were always a very good team. Now you're doing this with DeMar DeRozan, who's got 3 years left on his deal. So you're looking to somehow facilitate a quick rebuild around DeMar DeRozan. And you're giving up, arguably, a top 3 player in the NBA right now. I'm not sure how this works out for San Antonio. And again, you can talk about the draft pick. It's a top 20 pick. I don't see Toronto being horrible next year. I don't think they're going to be that bad. So you've seen what a top 20 pick gets you in the NBA. It's just going to kind of get you a role player. This was a really deep draft that we just had. And you got some good pieces later on in that draft, but that doesn't happen every year. That happens maybe once every 5 to 10 years. Usually you want to be drafting in the top 3 in the NBA. That's where you can get a guy who's a game changer. You can get a guy who maybe will bud into a superstar. Maybe you can at least get a star there. Not at 17, 18, 19, or in the second round. I mean, 2 second-round picks. I mean, I'm not really sure what San Antonio was thinking with this trade. I expected more. Now, me, myself, looking at what San Antonio gave up, I've already said Kawhi Leonard, arguably a top 3 player in the NBA when he's healthy. I like Danny Green. I think Danny Green is a piece on a contending team. I think he's a guy who's a role player, understands his role, and he accepts his role, and he does a really good job. You gave up all of that for DeMar DeRozan, who we've already discussed. He's a very good player. I don't think either one of us think he's a superstar. I think we both think he's a star player. If he came to Detroit, we'd all be ecstatic. Everybody here would be ecstatic, but not if we had to give up a guy like Kawhi Leonard. And then you get a guy who's coming off of a rookie season, and you get a protected top 20 draft pick. That's not doing it for me. I expected more. I think San Antonio shot themselves in the foot because they had zero leverage as soon as Kawhi said he wanted to go to LA. The moment he said he wanted to go to LA, they had zero leverage. They couldn't do anything to really get the stakes up for this. And now you have to realize Toronto gave up a lot here. There's a lot of risk involved in what Toronto did because Kawhi could walk out the door next year. Kawhi could walk out the door next year, and if they have a really bad season, you don't have a first-round draft pick. So Toronto gave up a boatload when you look at what they could be losing next season. But here right now, as we're breaking this down, it's not enough for me if I'm San Antonio. I'm not sure how you feel about this.
Yeah, definitely both sides. It leaves you with your head scratched going, The first thought I would have is, yeah, okay, everyone knows that Kawhi wants to go to the Lakers, but guess what? You still have the opportunity to drive up the price if you just keep him around in San Antonio up until the trade deadline. Then you might have a couple teams. All you need is 2 teams, maybe in contention. Maybe it's Boston, maybe it's LA at the trade deadline, and you can then reach out, maybe get a first-round pick guaranteed. You could get maybe a more impactful player than a DeMar DeRozan. So I just feel like San Antonio at some point decided and said, look, this has become too toxic. The noise surrounding Kawhi Leonard and him being involved with the organization is too much. We'll take DeMar DeRozan and we'll make him fit into the system, and we'll take it and we'll go with it. And we have the ability here in our system to take a player with DeRozan's skills and start off the process of rebuilding. And so I feel like San Antonio just said, look, we want to rid ourselves of Kawhi Leonard. We will take the scrutiny. We will move forward. For Toronto, it definitely is a head-scratcher, but you can understand it because if you and I were to sit back a year ago and say, where's Paul George going to end up? We would say, right. The Lakers, the Warriors, Houston. He's going to have the pick of the litter. He can go wherever he wants. I think OKC would have been 30th on the list. And what did they do? They were successful. They wowed him over a year. He felt the love. Now, it's going to be tough in Toronto because of the fact that I do believe they're third in the pecking order. I think it's going to be the 76ers and Boston being the class of the East, and then you got the Raptors who are going to be trying to come up and make their way and make some noise. So does Kawhi Leonard like being the class of the East, being among the elite? Probably. I mean, when you play the Pistons a couple times and you're like, oh, this is way better than banging everybody in the Western Conference, I do think playing a season in the East will open up Kawhi Leonard's eyes to, you know what, the path to a title, the path to more success in the NBA is probably going to be a little bit easier coming out of the East. So I do think when he plays there, I do think that he'll lean towards staying in the East. Staying in Toronto, that's a little bit tough in terms of basketball because that's not the basketball mecca. We all know he wants to go to LA. He wants to be in the mix. But at the same time, you could also be in the mix if you go to Boston, if you go to the 76ers, maybe you stay in the East. Maybe, you know what? The Pistons are like, you know what? We figure out a way to pay some taxes and clear some salary. Maybe if we clear Andre Drummond out, we decide to put a full court press and make a move for Kawhi Leonard. We got a year. So there's a lot to be looked at. It's going to be a fun year. But for both sides, I think we are all sitting here with our head scratched going, Toronto took the biggest risk, but they got the most to gain if they can keep him. And there's a strong chance maybe they'll make a full court press and at least try.
How does this sound for a starting lineup for you next season? It's going to be DeJounte Murray as your point guard. It'll probably be DeMar DeRozan as your shooting guard, Manu Ginobili as your strong forward, LaMarcus Aldridge as your center, and Paul Gasol as your power forward. I don't know how many games that's going to help you win in the West. The West is brutal, man. It's tough. I don't know if this makes you or helps you contend with teams like Golden State, going to help you sit there and contend with a team like Houston. I just don't see how this move necessarily makes you a better player. San Antonio has to do something else. There has to be more to this, because just looking at it right now, I think San Antonio struggles next year. I think San Antonio struggles mightily. I don't think this move necessarily helps put them over the top. If you're making this move right now, and everybody in San Antonio, the entire brain trust says, look, let's make this move now. Let's put ourselves in a spot to make a bigger splash next year. This year, we're going to chalk it up as an L. Next year, we're going to be able to add a couple more pieces, and we're going to strengthen our roster, and we're going to be better next year. I could see that. But right now, if you're telling me you're making this move, and really and truly, it seems like San Antonio is scared. Seems like they're afraid of not getting anything for Kawhi when Kawhi leaves. So they're just trying to get something in return. Doesn't matter what, just something. And DeMar DeRozan is kind of that auxiliary piece. It's not like you hit the lotto, and it's not like you're going home from the prom empty-handed. Do you know what I'm saying? You're not going to go to first. You're not going to go home with it. You're not going to hit the home run, but you're probably going to get a hand job in the back of a car on your way home from prom. It's kind of where I'm seeing this and where I'm at with this.
So where does Kawhi Leonard now rank in the pantheon of the Eastern Conference? Does he slot in there as a top 2 player? Are the players from Boston ahead of him, 76ers? What do you think about Kawhi Leonard's role with the Raptors, and where does he shake out being a prominent figure in the East? Because he's now going to be hyped up as one of the top 3 players in the entire Eastern Conference.
Absolutely, and deservedly so. I think he arguably, again, you could say he is, if not the number 1, he's the number 2 guy in the East. You have to realize what Kawhi brings to the table when he's healthy. This is a guy who can score. He's a Finals MVP. He's a guy who plays defense, which is not something that a lot of guys do in the NBA right now. Playing defense is really important. He's really good at it. Yeah, I think he's at least a top 2 guy in the East. Again, overall in the NBA, arguably a top 3 guy.
Right, it goes like Kawhi Leonard, Jason Tatum, and then you got all the players on the Sixers, and you're looking at some of the young talent there.
You got Ben Simmons, who's a stud. But, I mean, in the East, I think, okay, so for Toronto, let's start here. For Toronto, not looking any further than this year, because this could all go to hell in a handbasket next year. But looking at Toronto right now, I think this legit makes them
better than the Sixers?
I don't know if it makes them better than the Sixers. I want to say it makes them on par with Boston. I think Boston's really and truly the best in the East. I think this puts them on par with them. I can see a Boston and Toronto semifinal. Winner goes on to play Golden State for the championship. Maybe Houston, depending on what happens with Chris Paul and his hamstring. So I think this helps elevate Toronto. The problem is what happens after this year. Like you said, if they kind of go the OKC route and they're able to coerce Kawhi and make him feel loved, make him feel like he wants to be here, and they can kind of shun all the bright lights from LA, I think they got a real great shot to be something going forward. You got some pieces here. It's going to be real interesting what happens next season, how everything kind of shakes out in free agency. This is the one thing that we talked about a couple weeks ago on the podcast, maybe even last week. I don't know. All my weeks run together at this point. With the NBA being really, really interesting in the offseason, something that they've learned from the NFL. The NFL, 24/7, 365 days a year. The NFL's always going, always churning out some type of story, something that keeps you invested and keeps you interesting. The NBA's done that now. I mean, we just got done with the free agency period where everybody was talking about what LeBron's doing. What's LeBron doing? LeBron makes his decision, and then a bunch of pieces start to fall in place. And after that, it was Kawhi watch. Where's Kawhi going? What's Kawhi doing? Are they going to move Kawhi? Is he going to stay? What's going to happen? And then all that kind of died down, and then, bam, today happens. And Kawhi Leonard gets moved to Toronto. And now we're talking about what's going to happen with San Antonio, what's going to happen with Toronto. How does this directly impact your Pistons, which we're going to get to here in a second. And it leads you to what happens next year with next year's free agency class, because Kawhi's going to be a free agent. He's going to be you could argue the top dog in free agency next year. And we're all assuming he's going to go to LA. But what if he doesn't? What if he stays in Toronto? What does that mean? It's really interesting how the NBA has began to cultivate these stories, whether it be on purpose or on accident. it's really interesting. And I think right now the NBA has one of the best things going where you're just so dialed in and want to know what's going on. What are these guys doing? Now, as far as your Pistons are concerned, your job just got a whole lot tougher. I mean, Kawhi Leonard, top 3 player in the NBA. Good luck. You basically moved out LeBron James, arguably the best player in the NBA, for Kawhi Leonard. Good luck. I don't see this necessarily shifting too much around for the Pistons. I think me and you both going into next season, seeing them bidding for a playoff spot. I don't think either one of us seen them getting home court advantage. So you were going to finish either 5, 6, 7, or 8. I think at this point, you're lucky if you finish 6. And I think that's kind of where it's at. You're going to have a real tough road to hoe here because the way I see it right now, it's Boston and Toronto at the very, very top. And then after that, it's the 76ers and then probably the Bucks. And then it's a whole cast of characters. Do you know what I'm saying? And the Pistons are one of those cast of characters. I don't think you're very good. I don't think you're great. I think you're stuck. I think you're stuck for a couple years.
Let me ask you this. What are the chances that Kawhi finishes the season in Toronto? Because now you've acquired him, and you realize you have you got all the rest of this year in 2018 and the early part of 2019 prior to the trade deadline. You start to get a feel, or most organizations will know if a guy is going to stay or not.
Yep.
If Kawhi Leonard keeps saying, look, we're going to definitely, my camp wants to go to L.A., we're lockstead, we're not going to be really willing to negotiate terms.
I love where your head's at, by the way.
So then you go, you know what? Okay, now we got Kawhi Leonard. We got a trade chip. If we can get a couple pieces maybe out west, maybe we got a couple pieces here in the east. Maybe the Sixers are like, look, maybe they're struggling, middling around in the 5th seed, and they want to make a move. Maybe now we just go with Kawhi Leonard as being a guy we acquired. We made our efforts. We can tell our fan base, look, we made a solid effort to try and compete. It just didn't work out. Kawhi doesn't want to be here. Boom, we flip him, and we acquired draft picks, especially if it all depends on Kawhi playing well. Now you got an asset that you could move for some pieces, and you could really kick off a rebuild if you get a first-round pick and a contributing player. Is this a smart move for Toronto if they decide to turn around and flip him?
I think so. And again, like I said, I love where your head's at because I was thinking the same thing. So if Kawhi doesn't want to stay next year, and like you said, most organizations they
should be aware.
Yeah, they generally have an idea of what's going on. I don't think anybody was blindsided that LeBron James left Cleveland. I think Dan Gilbert was ready for it. Everybody knew it was coming.
The letter was ready.
Right. It was just
they hired the crew to erase the mural.
Right. Where's he going? That was the question. Where's he going? Because he's not staying in Cleveland. But absolutely, you now have a trade piece for a team who's in contention, a team who's contending. You could turn around, and if you wanted to, does Boston still have a bajillion draft picks? I'm assuming they still have a trillion of them, because every time you turn around, Danny Ainge is trading somebody off for some draft picks in the future. He's like the Bill Belichick of the NBA. If I'm Toronto, I'll say, all right, cool, you know what? We're not keeping him. We ain't winning nothing right now. Let's make a trade. And I would trade him away, and I would get a bunch of draft picks, and I would get a piece or two. Do you know what I'm saying? I mean, instantly. You can't tell me that if Boston had Kyrie Irving, Gordon Hayward, and Kawhi Leonard, seriously? Not even talking about what, Jason Tatum and whoever else is on Boston at this time? I mean, really? That team right there going up against, say, Golden State or Houston? A slugfest. Absolute slugfest. And I would love to see it. So, for Toronto, I think they have 2 options here, right? One, you wow and you make Kawhi feel so loved and so appreciated that he does not want to leave, and you find some way to ink out some type of extension so you don't end up losing him. Or 2, by the time the trade deadline rolls around, you have a good feel on where he's going and what he wants to do, and you move him. And when you move him for pieces, multiple, lots. You go out there, you get a couple draft picks, you get a couple players, and you really get that rebuild into full go, and you cut down a year or 2 because you've got all those pieces that you acquired from whoever you traded with.
Another reason to be pissed off at the Pistons, Tom Gores, like
they weren't
we said,
even involved in any of this.
There's no involvement. Why? Because you let a guy that potentially you didn't know if he was going to stay or go. You really didn't have any insight regarding Stan Van Gundy. You let Stan Van go out and acquire Blake Griffin. If you're the owner and you're like, you don't see this, you don't see the potential of a Kawhi Leonard being available, you just say, look, Stan Van, go about your business. We'll keep you or not, but we'll keep that 12th pick. You could have gotten somebody important. You could have gotten Miles Bridges. You don't think maybe you talked to the Spurs about Miles Bridges and maybe Andre Drummond for Kawhi Leonard? You don't think that's something they might be interested in? Maybe some foresight. Maybe if the owner isn't trigger happy or isn't wanting a real superstar like a Blake Griffin, I feel like if that's the case and it's revealed that, Tom Gores is really the driving force behind picking up Blake Griffin, again, you missed out on a Kawhi Leonard. You missed out on a chance to bring in a guy that could be somebody that we'd all pay to go see. I'd go pay to see Kawhi Leonard, right? Miles Bridges and Andre Drummond for Kawhi Leonard. Doesn't that sound nice?
Yeah, and on top of all of that, I mean, you just look at what you gave up in the Blake Griffin trade. And this goes back to a conversation we had last year at the trade deadline. You had pieces that you should have got more for. Do you know what I'm saying? You could have traded those off for different assets. There's no way in hell I would have, if I was the owner, I would have said, yeah, let's go out there and let's get that guy. But just because of what it does to your cap structure. Your cap structure is so screwed up right now, you can't do anything. There's nothing you can do right now. You're stuck. You're absolutely stuck. You had two pieces you had Avery Bradley and you had Tobias Harris. There's no guarantee either one of those guys were going to stick around. They were both trade commodities. You could have traded both those guys for a first-round pick. You mean to tell me you could have went into that draft with 3 first-round picks, possibly moved up and got a guy that you targeted? I mean, look, I can make the argument in the case that if the Pistons would have stuck with their 12th overall pick, done nothing, just those two guys walk out the door. On a starting lineup of Andre Drummond, Stanley Johnson, I don't know, John Lure, Henry Ellenson, I don't care. And Miles Bridges and Reggie Jackson is a better starting lineup than what you're going into this season with. It just...
Yikes.
It doesn't make any sense to me what the Pistons did and how they hurt themselves.
Exactly. The way they
shot
set up
themselves in the foot.
They didn't set up properly for a rebuild. And they really are trying to roll in this situation with the guys that they have. They're overtaxed. I mean, they're a luxury team with no real flexibility. And look at the moves they're making.
You're stuck right now. You can't
Zaza's
do
here.
anything.
Really? That's the signing we got to look at? Zaza? Really?
Honestly, their best move this offseason was Glenn Robinson. That was their best move. And you can't fight me on it. You can't argue that to me. That was their best move because, like you said, their only other move was Zaza. Really?
Yeah.
So the Pistons are stuck. They're hurt. And if I'm Toronto, it's a huge gamble. It's a massive gamble, but it could pay off. And like I said, I've already outlined the 2 ways it could pay off. You could get him. You could maybe win a championship this year, and then you could sign him and keep him. Or you got a piece. You got to chip the trade. And you could demand a high dollar amount. As far as San Antonio goes, I think the bloom is off the rose. I think you're going to start to see San Antonio come down to earth. I don't think they're going to be looked at as a team that is feared in the NBA anymore. I don't think they're going to be looked at as that destination where other guys want to go play and other guys want to go. I think they're going to become kind of a middle of the road team. I could argue that they'd become OKC. They'd be the Texas version of Oklahoma City. Ugh. Just kind of a team where you got some guys, you're generally kind of competitive, not really a superstar there. You're just there. You're just a team who's going to win some games, but you're never going to win a championship.
That's what happens when you mismanage an organization. When key players are there, you're not in the mix. When there's situations in which you could be a player, you're not. You're a bystander. Mm-hmm. And that's what the Pistons are. They're bystanders. They're reacting. They're not proactive. They really are trying to sell. In public, their staff are trying to sell you that, hey, our big three can compete. Look, they're throwing out stats that say Reggie Jackson, when he was in the lineup, the Pistons were above 500. Blake Griffin, look what he can do. He's going to shoot more threes. Look at Andre. He's continuing to evolve as a shooter. Can he bring it 50 games? So they're trying to sell you what I think is a bunch of bullshit. But
do you think other owners in other organizations around the league just kind of laugh at things the Pistons have done? Because I look, if it was me and you, if you're the Pistons and you're trying to sell me all that stuff and I'm Boston, I'm just like, what are these clowns talking about? Like, what do they see in their team? Because I'm not seeing it. Like, I would have to go back and I'd have to do like a much closer look, be like, what am I missing? And then I'd get my whole staff on, what am I missing here? Somebody tell me that I'm wrong. And my whole staff would be like, no, you're right. They're basically selling crap. And I'd be like, okay, cool. All right, back about your business. Let's go. But I would stop for at least 24 hours to reinvestigate and revisit this, and then I would laugh at you some more. Do you know what I'm saying? I don't understand what the Pistons are doing. Everybody, they've got to be laughed at by the rest of the league. I don't get it. Blows my mind.
All right, let's take our first time out. We may effort a guest. If not, we have a bunch of other great topics we're going to get to on this fine edition of Doc and Jock. Stay with us. Thank you so much for supporting our sponsors.
Yeah, we coming now. Come on. Yeah, that's right. We put it down. It's like a family in here, just a little disabled. Putting it down, we lay them out on the table. Yeah. Who's in the house? The brothers in the house. Gotta turn it on out, let you know what we about. Kinda like Cain and Abel, a bit unstable. Don't be breaking the brain, break the whole damn table. How we shut it down.
On the phone with us right now is Nic Manion, fourth place winner of the World Series of Poker. Nick, how you doing today?
I'm doing really good. How you guys doing?
Excellent, excellent. So I guess let's just kind of start here because you're a local guy. We're all super proud of you and what you did at the World Series of Poker. What was your original introduction to playing poker?
I got into poker just by seeing it on TV and getting interested in the competition of it between other players.
How did you end up finding your way to this level? I mean, the World Series of Poker that's no small chunk of change that you won, and you're playing with the best players in all of the world. So how did you get to this level?
Pretty much over the past few years, I've gotten into more tournament poker and wanting to get better at the game and be able to play at this level. So I've been playing more smaller tournaments to get really good at them, and got the opportunity to come out here and try this.
So where did you cut your teeth? What casinos or where were the places that you played poker early on?
I have played some tournaments at Hammond, Indiana, the Horseshoe Casino there, and back home in Michigan, Firekeepers in Battle Creek. They've been running some MSPTs and did really well this year too.
So going into the final table, you played poker at an extremely high level. You've been going on now 10 years. What were your nerves like as you continue to fight your way through the field?
You really don't think about the nerves when you're playing because you're focusing on hands that are being played and trying to figure out what each player is doing. And at the end of the day, it kind of hits you. But while you're playing, you just focused on everything that's going on at that moment.
So take us through early on in the early levels. Did you chip up? How was your progress up until the final table?
The beginning days of the poker tournament, I was pretty low stacked, and my play was pretty basic of just waiting for good hands and trying to win the hands that I did play, and that's what kept happening throughout the whole tournament. I didn't get a big stack until day 5, 6-ish.
So what advice would you give to I don't know, I guess a novice poker player who wants to go play in a tournament similar to this? Just kind of bide your time, wait a little bit, play good hands, try not to get blinded out. What would be the best advice you'd give to somebody?
The really good thing about this tournament is the length of the blind levels gives you the ability to be patient and wait for good hands. You don't have to press hands that you shouldn't be playing. So I would say to just try it out and wait for the right hands that you think you should play and see what happens.
Take us through your mindset as you're getting through the tournament. I mean, you're chipping up, you're starting to see, okay, now I made the money. And then when did you start to realize maybe I can make a push, maybe into top 27 or even make the final table?
Pretty much the first 5 days were just, okay, let's try and get to the next day. And then when I finally got a big stack, it was like, we might be able to make a final table here.
What was that? What was the rush like to make the final table? Just like you're sitting there and you're like, I can't believe I made this. Like how does that go? What's going through your body and your mind at that time?
It's really surreal to have that moment come, because last year watching it, it's never thought I was ever going to be even playing the main event this year. And then to make a final table, it was just like, I can't believe this is happening.
Now, for those that watched ESPN, they watched the live coverage on a 30-minute delay. One of the greatest hands, I believe, in all of World Series of Poker history happens, and you're involved in it. You open the pot with aces, and then take us through it because it was epic. Take us through how the hand played out and what you were going through as this epic hand plays out for all of us to see.
Yeah, I had looked down at pocket aces under the gun and raised the standard amount, and the seat 9 was a really slow player. He thought and just called. And then the seat 1 counted out his stack a few times and eventually went all in. And I'm just like, oh boy, here we go. Hopefully we win this hand. Got back to me. I paused a little bit, went all in. And then seat 9 was thinking forever, and I'm like, what's this guy doing? Just wasting our time. And all of a sudden he calls too. I flip over my hand and I run over to my rail. I didn't even look to see what the guys were holding. And my buddy Jordan Young was in the audience, and he's looking at me, he's yelling, "They both have kings." And I'm like, what? Because you could never have that situation happen. And I look up at the TV screen, and the dealer had the pocket kings, and my aces set up. And it was the best feeling in the world, because it's going to be pretty hard for them guys to win the hand.
Yeah, the board bricks out and the final table is set. You become the chip leader entering the final table. What was that night like ahead of playing nine-handed for a bunch of money? What was it like being the chip leader among one of the leaders going into a final table of the World Series of Poker?
To be the chip leader of the main event was just unreal. I hadn't even played, I think, any hands that whole time up until pocket aces. So I was basically just hoping to make the final table with around 35 million, and then to hit that hand and have the chip lead, it was just like, I don't even understand how this happened.
Yeah, it was wild to see. But now the final table shook out. It didn't go necessarily your way. How would you describe your experience playing nine-handed, playing for all the marbles at the final level there's in the World Series?
It was the best experience ever. The first day, I lost some hands right away and then didn't win any hands, so I lost a lot of chips on the first day of the final table, which it happens. It's poker, but it was great to be able to play it out and make the top four, and I wouldn't change it for anything. It was the best experience ever, and I loved it.
So take us through the hand that ended up busting you. Walk us through what was going on, not just the emotions, but just kind of what was going through your head and what you're talking about with your buddies.
Yeah, I've been pretty card dead at the final table, and the guys were raising a lot of hands, and finally I get an ace high hand, and it tends to be ahead of what they're raising with, except for this time he had the pocket kings, and just hoping for that ace to come, and it didn't, and the dream run was over, but it was great.
What did you do right after you got busted? Did you go for a drink at the bar? Because I know I would go for a drink at the bar, or I'd probably go celebrate after I realized how much money I just won.
Right after I busted, I think we went and played Kiss mini golf in the Rio.
Nice.
I didn't even have a drink at all, I don't think.
Nice.
I'm not much of a drinker, but yeah, we went and played mini golf, and then we went bowling after.
That's awesome.
Now, the prize money that you won, $2.85 million. Now, back in the day, there's some legendary photos of poker players actually taking the cash out in duffel bags. But most of the time, I think players take it out in chips. But most people want to know, when you get the $2.85 million, how do you get it? Do you get it in chips? Or do you maybe go, maybe I want to look at $1 million in hard cash and splash it on a Rio bed? How did you get the $2.85 million?
I actually got a little bit in cash so that we could have some fun, and then I had a wire transfer, and it still hasn't hit the account yet, so this could still be a dream, and I haven't woke up yet.
We're lucky enough to have Nic Manion, fourth place finisher, World Series of Poker main event, kind enough to join us and talk about poker. What's next now? What's next for you? Are you going to be transitioning full-time to play bigger stakes, $10,000 buy-ins or more? Probably
not. I don't want to get too crazy with my bankroll, but I would love to travel and play some smaller tournaments, some 1650s and under, and see if we can have some more success in this game.
So a few seconds ago, you talked about what you did right after what you did with the money that you got. You took a little bit to go have some fun. What kind of fun did you guys have? Is there anything you can tell us or you want to talk about, or is what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas?
Like I paid for everybody to play the mini golf, and then Jordan paid for everybody to go bowling, but I just played some cheaper table games. We went and played blackjack, just $10 tables, and I gave everybody a couple $100 to sit and play, and you just had some fun that way.
What other games do you like to play besides poker? You just mentioned blackjack. Do you like to play craps or roulette?
Blackjack, Mississippi Stud, and there's this new game that I have seen as high card flushes. You get dealt 7 cards, and you just have to get a better flush than the dealer.
At this time, are you going to take some time off and just kind of bask in the glory of your World Series run, or are you going to sit there and you're going to start looking around for some more tournaments to play and just jump right back into it?
I was told there's a tournament series in Florida coming up in a few weeks. I'm going to have to check that schedule out and possibly go that way and play some more tournaments. But other than that, I'm just going to play some fun cash games around here and talk to people and let them live the experience through me.
So what does the $2.85 million man do now? Do you quit your job when you go back home, or do you just commit to playing cards full time now? How does this work? I've never talked to a millionaire ever in my life, so you're the first.
I actually just played cash games for the last few years to grind out and pay the bills. So you've been. But if I did have a job, I probably would have to say, see you later.
Now, prior to your run, were you trained by any of the pros? I know a lot of people in the poker community, they work together. Did anybody get a piece of you, or did you have 100% of yourself?
My buddy, it was the reason I went out there. He told me a few months ago that he was going to Vegas to play some poker in the qualifiers and stuff, and said, if you want to come out, I'll put you in 2 of the qualifiers. And that was the only reason I went out to Vegas, was the chance to play the qualifiers to make it into the main event.
We're joined by Nic Manion, 4th place finisher, World Series of Poker. Now, you played
Michigan's own.
Michigan's own. We got to give the proper credit. And as well as Joe Cata, who had a marvelous experience there over the course of the summer. What was it like playing with him?
It was really good playing with Joe. He was very talkative and very open, and I got to know him a little bit while we were at the last couple tables together, and it really nice to see that he won a bracelet right after this event. It was amazing. He's playing really well.
Have you guys ever ran into each other playing locally or in the surrounding states that you guys go to different tournaments in? Have you guys ever crossed paths before?
No, I never really played any tournaments until this past year, and this was towards the end of the tournament. It was the only time I got to play at the table with him.
This is an incredible story, going from basically just average Joe, entering into a tournament, and then taking 4th place at the World Series of Poker. That's awesome.
Yeah, it was the best decision of my life, is to head out to Vegas.
Yes, no doubt about it. Nic Manion, thank you so much for your time. You can follow him on Twitter at SPEWZATA. 4th place finisher, World Series of Poker. We hope to hear continued success, avoid the bad beats, and if you're around the east side, definitely swing by Sterling Heights. We'd love to have a chat in person.
All right, awesome. Thank you guys for having me.
That's awesome. Thank you,
Win
Nick.
it all next year, all right, Nick?
That would be awesome. I would love to do that.
We're pulling for you.
Thanks so much. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, guys.
Great interview. I'm glad we had an opportunity to talk to Nic Manion. I just reached out to him via Facebook. I said, man, good stuff. Would you like to come on our podcast? And man, so what was it like for you now talking to your first millionaire?
Dude, my first millionaire. It's crazy. He sounds like an average guy.
He is
just like an average Joe.
Yeah, that's the best part about poker is literally, and that's why it was fun for me going out to Connecticut and playing a $500 limit tournament is you could
Would you do this?
So you have never Googled your guy? You haven't been following me on? I've been talking about my poker tales.
I don't ever Google you.
You should Google me. For a long time, it was a problem because
I know that you have a little bit of a degenerate bone in your body, and you love poker.
Yeah, for a long time, when you typed in my name, the first thing that would come up was professional poker player. Because 10 years ago, about 13 years ago now, I went out with me and my brother-in-law. We drove to Connecticut, and we didn't play the main event. We played some of the the smaller tournaments. So if you don't know poker, they have a series of events, a series of tournaments marked by bigger buy-ins. And so the buy-ins will range from $100 to $500 to $1,000, all the way up to $10,000 and $25,000 that make up a series. So we wanted to go and have a trip. So we didn't fly. We drove to Connecticut. We drove to Foxwoods, stayed there for a couple of days, played cash games, and made a poker weekend out of it. And I played a limit tournament with the pros. And I played against, if you know him, Fabrice Soulier. He was at my table, real aggressive, raising every hand. And I started to pay attention to what he was doing, so I started raising back. And it wasn't a no-limit tournament. It was a limit tournament. That's my game. Because you can't really go broke on any one hand.
Right.
It's a limit. So I got to, when I first started playing cards, I got to being proficient at limit cards, because that's where if you make a hand and you check someone, you're going to get paid out and you can make some extra bets. So I lasted out of a field, I think of like maybe 400. I got to 29th. And
really?
I doubled my money, and I won money playing cash games. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, no,
I didn't know this. Like I knew you played cards,
yeah,
right?
You didn't know that?
And I think at some point or another we've discussed your guy weekend poker weekend thing. Yeah. But we've never I never knew that was.
And then when I visited,
kind of thought it was just a thing.
Yeah, yeah. Then when my first cash was, I played a $100 tournament at a casino in California when I visited my brother-in-law when he was out there in school.
Yeah.
I finished 4th. and it was great. I played tournaments. I played a lot of hands. I've played some cash games where if you took a bad beat, it was going to hurt, and I held my own. And for me, you probably would assume how I play. I play really tight, positionally strong, make a couple bluffs against some of the weaker players, but I'm not the kind of guy that can play every hand. I can't play 3-8 and take it. And so, but as you get older, you start to read players, and you not only play what you have, you play the opponent. And that's when you sense weakness, you shove all in. But No Limit is a beast. That's a tough game. And the grind, if we ever get a chance to talk about to Nick again, is that it's a mental game. These guys played long hours, day after day after day, and the World Series of Poker made a change in that they played the tournament straight through. Whereas in previous years, what would happen was they'd play up to the final table, take 3 months off, everyone would get coached up, and then they'd play in November. This year, the last couple of years, they've just played it straight through, and it made it for a fun watch on ESPN. That's where I got my bug, and I was like, man, I miss it. So I went down to the casino and won won $150.
Really?
Yeah. I played 1-2 No Limit. Oh man, the plays. If you play, listen. Not to give a detailed lesson here, but I read books. I've, watched a lot of poker, and definitely being a psychologist, you can tell when people are nervous or when they have something. And if you go down to the casino and you just play premium hands, the top 10 hands, aces, kings, queens, jacks, ace, king, ace, queen, and you play them for low money, you can flop around for $2. And you got these wild Arab guys who want to race to $16 every hand. And so I got lucky. I slow played nines. I had a $2 investment, went around 8 people in the pot, so it's $16 in right away, and it comes under 9 high, so 8, but it comes all hearts. The turn card's a 9. I'm like, yeah, baby, I'm getting paid. Bet $30, 2 calls. Then I bet the river. I bet $50, $50 or so, and then someone raised me. And I'm like, what? You didn't flop a flush. Yeah. The odds of that, if you know the odds and the numbers, the odds of flopping a flush straight up are like 1 in 300. So I just called it, and he turned over 2 pair. The river hurt him and made me extra money. So then I sat there and had a good time, had some coffee, messed around a little bit. Yeah, I'm decent.
Let me ask you this, okay?
Yeah.
So you end up winning that hand. Sounds like it's a pretty nice, sizable chunk, right?
Yeah, it was good.
So at that point, you're kind of set.
Yep.
Do you, just because it's courtesy, do you feel like you have to stay and play at least another hand or two?
Oh, yeah,
or
yeah.
do you get up and leave?
No, definitely. You definitely know your cousin. I wanted to leave right away. I'm like, I'm winning. But, you know.
I always want to leave right away, but
No.
I know that's...
Yeah,
that's bad table
It's
manners.
bad taste. So what you do, the minimum thing you do is play a round. Play your blind the next time around. But you can do whatever you want. Really, like I said, people can gripe all you want, but you can just get up and leave the whole table and leave, go to the thing. So I won the hand early on, and so I kept playing, picked up kings again, and had a good old time at the casino. And it's relaxing. I like it because you feel like you have a chance to win with your skills. And I know that I'm not going to play 3-8 and rate. I'm not calling off $200. I'm not a donkey. I'm just going to sit there. It costs $3 a round. Well, you get to see 9 poker hands for $3. So how fun is that? You get to have pizza, eat for free. It's a fun experience. So if you're a novice and you're looking for a game that you can compete against other players, not the casino, I mean, they take their rake, they take a chunk of the pot, but you have a chance where you can find the sucker at the table and you can hurt them. You can, and there's actually big games there that my buddy plays in where you can buy in for $800. The blinds are 2-5, no limit. So you can do some damage where you got guys that are just showing up with $2,000-$3,000 ready to drop it, and my buddy just waits for, like, he makes a set, buys in for $800, walks out with $1,500. Somebody even messaged me, they bought in for $400 in the 2-5 no limit game, walked out with $1,000.
Really?
There's a lot of bad players, and there's a lot. And okay, here's advice for free.
See, I used to play poker like every night. Like my buddy Jeff would have tournaments every single.
Yeah.
Well, it wasn't every night. It was at least once, maybe twice a week we would play.
Right.
We'd get a whole group of guys together. It'd be like 10 of us. We'd all sit at a table and we'd all play until you bust it out. And then once you bust it out, you get cash games going.
Exactly.
I haven't played in a while though.
Yeah. No, I'm positionally strong. A little bit. And here's a quick.
I do the same thing. I play really tight.
Yeah. Doc and Jock. Don't assume that we don't give free advice here. We want to help people out. During Red Wings game, during the season,
yes, a
lot of people like to go down to the casino and play cards after seeing the Wings game, and they tend to drink and relax. So if you want to be, a little bit of a shark, you go down around 10:30, get yourself situated, maybe a little early, just before the game ends, get situated, get on a table, and then wait for the suckers to roll in because they're drunk, they're a little bit loose, they want to have a good time, so they're in there splashing around with garbage. Like they'll play, like you don't play any hands, you pick up aces, and you can open the pot for $20, you'll get 2 or 3 people to call, and if you hit a hand, you're going to win $200 in one hand.
Really?
There's a lot of suckers that go down there after Wings games. Yeah.
Wow.
Oh yeah. There's a lot of money to be made in poker.
You.
Oh yeah. I heard it all.
Throwing out advice.
Yeah. Free advice. Go down, play cards, play well, and just deal with the bad beats the best way possible. So good stuff. All right. Let's take our final time out. We'll come back. Just kind of splash around talking about the Lions and renovations and talking about some other odds and ends to finish out the podcast. You're listening to Doc and Jock, the best guests, the best podcast, and you know it. Thanks to everyone who supported this fine project. We wouldn't be able to have the 4th place finisher from the World Series of Poker, a man featured on ESPN for many days, if we didn't have a great host site. Thank you so much for those that started new projects and started new podcasts using Podomatic. We greatly appreciate it. Definitely check out Podomatic.com and definitely check out DetroitSportsPodcast.com. It's the hub of the operation. It's where you can go to find out what show airs when. You can take care of all your online shopping needs. Buy all of your Detroit sports tickets through DetroitSportsPodcast.com. We greatly appreciate it. It's how we can keep the lights on, the microphones hot, and continue to go out there and reach for the biggest guests, the most pertinent, interesting individuals. Thank you so much. It really makes it fun to do this project when we reach out, and 95% of the time we get results. We get people to message us back. It's really cool. It's really different than when it was back in September of 2013. It's all thanks to your support. Thank you so much for all your engagement via the various social media platforms. We greatly appreciate it. Check out DetroitSportsPodcast.com. Episode 258, rolling right along. Great time, man. Loved the interview with Nic Manion. Thank him again. You can follow him on Twitter at SPEWZATA. Oh, man. I know
you do realize, right? 2 more, and we're at 5 years.
Yeah.
5 years straight.
5 years straight.
Never taking a week off.
Never taking a week off. That's what makes this great, and I think that's what distinguishes us from others, is that we've been on the same time, same internet channel, same internet place. You know where to find us, and it makes it really, really fun. Now, before we get to the Lions and their thought process about spending even more money for probably no results, but we'll talk about that. I mean, you know they're coming for you because they want you to float the bill for this roof.
Yeah,
they're trying to figure it out. They're trying to be like, okay, how much can we tax these people for?
Yep.
What can we sell? We got Stafford. We got a coach. What else can we sell these people to get them to pay for this big time roof?
Let's sell them that the retractable roof is going to bring us a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
A lot of people want our opinion regarding Michigan State and finalizing their move for the AD. And I'll just give a quick take on this. Look, the optics are bad because of the fact that Engler said that he was going to do a national search, and people are wanting change. Now, for me, I'm not exactly angry at the move. I'm angry at the fact that you told people that you were going to actually interview somebody. So just go out there and do some token interviews. How hard is it just to parade a couple, men, women, experts, people that you think knowing full well, look, you're going to hire, Beekman, and that's the guy. You know who you're going to hire, but just play the game. You told people you were going to go out there and interview people, and you went out and hired a guy that's already been there. So everyone's upset. I understand Spartan Nation is not happy with the fact that we want change because of the fact that a really awful scandal took place. And so everybody that was involved, basically everybody that's a Spartan supporter, wants to clean house. By doing this, by hiring somebody who's been part of that program, the faith that a real investigation will take place or real consequences will happen is diminished. And that's the problem, is that the perception. Now, reality, this guy, everyone by all accounts thinks could do a good job. And I'm going to take the wait and see approach and think that he could do a good job. But the problem is when you don't interview nobody besides your guy, then it makes it seem like it's nepotism, that it's favoritism, that you had a guy in place and you didn't really want to search for the best candidate. So for Michigan State, they continue to shoot themselves in the foot. They're not doing it right, but in the end, he may end up doing a good job. At the very least, we hope that the scandals are resolved and practices are put in place so this doesn't happen again. But if you ask me, what's my confidence that it'll happen? Super low. Like in anything else, though, I have super low confidence in a lot of things because I don't think a lot of people are invested in the right things.
Look, I see a ton of issues with this Bill Beekman hire. And it's not even so much Bill Beekman himself. It's who orchestrated the hiring and how it was done and the message that it sends.
Exactly.
So Bill Beekman might be great at his job. Nobody really knows. Bill Beekman has no experience as an athletic director. He's never done this job before. For some reason, John Engler, the guy who seems to foul everything up since he's been appointed, interim president, I'm not sure why he's allowed to do the hire. This is kind of where I start with a lot of the issues I have with this. I'm not sure why John Engler's allowed to make this hire. John Engler has done nothing but screw things up since he's taken his role in the leadership of MSU. He has said things and he has done things that give me no confidence in his ability to do anything but maybe wipe his own butt. All right. Now, Bill Beekman himself is basically the butt boy for the board of trustees. That's what his job was beforehand. That's what he has been. So you're going to appoint a guy who is the butt boy for the board of trustees, the same board of trustees that got in all kinds of problems and all kinds of issues and looked the other way when Larry Nassar was running amok. Are we sure about this? Does this sound right? Does this sound like a good idea? Again, the optics are bad here. It's not good. And that's where I get really upset, especially when you got Engler coming out saying, yeah, we're going to do a national search. And by do your national search, you mean walk down the hallway to talk to the guy that somebody was like, hey, Bill Beekman's been doing a real great job. He's a calming presence in the athletic department. Okay, cool, sold. Let's get this guy. Has he ever done this job before? Never. What was his big claim to fame before? Oh, he was the butt boy for the board of trustees? Cool. Let's sign him up. Let's give him a fat check. It's all bad. The thing with Michigan State, what I think every Michigan State fan was hoping for, and look, this is coming from a Michigan guy. I feel bad for Michigan State fans, and I'm upset and I'm hurt for Michigan State for what they're going through, because this doesn't just look bad on Michigan State. This looks bad on the state of Michigan. You know, this entire incident, what led us to this point was absolutely horrible. And now we're dealing with the ramifications and the fallout from it. And we've been dealing with it for some time now. It's not like this just happened last week or last month. This happened months ago. Months, plural, multiple, like quite a few. And you still have a guy who's leading this entire brigade, who's a total mess himself. He goes and he hires basically his buddy. And you have a board of trustees who, while you had this pervert on the loose, was looking the other way and not necessarily doing their job. And the guy who you hire as your athletic director, again, no experience, hasn't done it before, and his biggest claim to fame is he helps out those guys who were looking the other way when the pervert was running around molesting girls. Do you see the issues here? There's a ton of them. It's all flawed. It's all faulty. And I don't want to just say burn it to the ground and let's start over, because that's not real. You can't do that. You have to have somebody in power. You have to have somebody in leader. You have to have some type of leadership presence here. You need to figure out what's going on with Engler. Are you going to make him your official president? If you do, it's a total mistake. It's a big time mistake. And I think all Michigan State fans can agree with me on that. You need to figure out who's going to be the president of MSU. Once you figure that out, that person should be in charge of hiring the athletic director. Those two people have to work hand in hand and work together. Your board of trustees needs to get blown out. There might be a few people that you keep around, people who have already come out and spoken out about all of this and how it's a total mess and how things need to get done. And the people who are probably leaking those stories of what was said during those meetings, I'd probably keep all those people because they want things done the right way. But other than that, you need to start over. You need to start from scratch.
Yeah.
And by keeping people who are problematic or have gone on to cause more problems, it doesn't make sense to me, and it's not sound reasoning and sound logic. It just, I see more issues coming. And look, at Bill Beekman's press conference, he talked about how things are more transparent and things are more open and this and that. But I don't really buy that, not from this guy, not from a guy who I see as part of the problem that was there before. And I think that's a big issue.
All right, we talked about one interesting organization in Michigan State and their athletic department, and let's go talk about the other interesting organization
and their athletic department.
And their department of what they're trying to do. Holy cow. All right, so again,
I like how you're exasperated.
I'm exasperated.
Before we even start.
I'm exasperated.
You sound like you just ran a marathon. You're like, I don't even want to do this.
It's going to be short, but it's just one of those things where you look at it and you go, there's protocol. MLS has told you they want a stadium. They've told you what to do. And
it's the lines, dude. Let's reinvent the wheel.
And let's just go beyond what anybody wants. And they're like, okay, let's just make a retractable roof in Detroit. Okay, all right, that's your plan. That's your big, that's your home run ball, is to say we're going to build a retractable roof. One, that's going to take forever. Yep. And two, it's going to cost millions of dollars. Millions of dollars. And when I posted it on our Twitter page at Detroit Podcast, it didn't get like an overwhelming response. I don't think people care. And here's the thing. I know that people are used to playing from the Silver Dome and now Ford Field for all these years indoors. Do you really want to go and watch the Lions, the way they play in like bone-chilling temperature? Are they going to keep it open? What are the logistics? And I look at it and I say, for the purpose of having an MLS team in Detroit, this is what you want to do. This is your stance. I'd say forget it. Just scrap it and say, look, fine. If MLS wants a specific stadium, then that's what we'll do to try to get a bid. But I feel like they'll do this, and what will happen is they'll never use it.
Yeah. Here's the thing, right? So a retractable roof on Ford Field would be cool for, say, September, October, maybe November. And then after that, you're not opening it up when it snows. You're just not going to do it. So what would be the point? Do you know what I'm saying? It doesn't make any sense. If you're trying to get an MLS team here, MLS has already come to you and told you what they want. They say, we want a standalone stadium, and it's got to be able to seat, at least 15,000 people? Build a stadium, have it seat at least 15,000 people, and let's call it a day. Do you know what I'm saying? So if the Fords and the Lions and everybody else think that Detroit's just going to pony up, what is it? I think it's like $45 million for a retractable roof. Is that what the cost was? I seen the cost here. Let me see if I can find it one more time. But it's ridiculous. It's absolutely nuts. Oh, no, I'm sorry. $150 million. I was way off. Way off. And that was back in 2016. That's what the cost was. So inflation. So that's up.
Wow.
So probably closer to $200 million. You're going to pass that on to the taxpayers?
Bogus.
What are we talking about here?
Yeah, exactly. Why? It's not needed. You have a nice stadium. You've already put... Look, and here's the other part, too, that I talked about. If you had a chance to hear my spiel, my rant on Detroit and how it's just not sexy enough to bring in big events. You made all these renovations, the $100 million, originally to try and get the Final Four. And they slapped you right in the mouth and said, seriously, we don't want you.
Yeah.
And so you did all that, and they still rejected you. For what? You could do all this to be what? Rejected again? Mm-hmm. The only way I would do this is to have a guarantee in place, signed, sealed, delivered. If we do it, we get an MLS team. If you don't have it and you're hoping that MLS likes it, that's the height of stupidity, really, in the end. You have to have assurances. If we invest this much money and we're going to make people pay for it, then we want a team, and we want you to say, it's Detroit. We want the announcement. We want it up front. But no, that's not how they do it. They just, slap money into things, and then we get the press conference. Oh, cities like Indy, cities like Houston, cities like New Orleans, they get the love, and Detroit's left holding their dick in their hands with nothing to show for it. And it's unfortunate, right?
And if you look at the way Ford Field is constructed, if you look up in the ceiling, there's so many rafters and girders in that place, keeping that gigantic inflatable balloon known as a ceiling up. You're going to have to remove all of that to then build something that can be slid over and slid back. It makes no sense to me, especially if the taxpayers are going to be the one fitting the bill for this. No, I say
pass,
no. I
pass.
say no. Hard pass.
Doc and Jock,
absolutely a hard pass.
Hard pass. Move on. You know what? I'm tired of having Detroit experience these losses after loss. I do think that Detroit is worthy of big events, but from what our supporters say and from what logistics say, there's not enough hotel rooms. There's not enough public transportation. The city is not fully back yet in terms of perception nationally. And it's unfortunate because I do think downtown is great. The district has really done a lot of things, but we're just not there yet. And so right now, nationally, we're not getting the love that I think we deserve, but it just isn't the case right now. Detroit is not on the stage nationally to get big-time events like the Final Four, WrestleMania, and things like that. Not yet. We're getting the smaller events. We're getting regionals. We're getting, volleyball events. We're getting, wrestling events. We're getting the big three. But now when you talk about Super Bowls, when you talk about Final Fours, when you talk about marquee events that are going to bring big-time dollars, Detroit's got to step it up, and they got to do more. I mean, literally, they tell you need public transportation. They set up the queue line, which stalls whenever idiots park on the side. You ever see that? Mm-hmm. That's the funniest thing I've ever seen is that the queue line cannot function because they did not decide to put it in the middle. They put it alongside traffic where, guys with 50 IQs just park their cars there, stops the queue line.
Yep.
That shouldn't...
It's so dumb.
I literally, I can't help but laugh. I go, why?
Have you ever rode the queue line? Have you rode it yet?
No.
Okay,
no.
so I've rode the queue line, I think, 3 or 4 times now, all right? And it's good. It works. The thing with the queue line is it's based on an honor system, so half the people don't pay, all right? So those people usually get in trouble by the police or by whatever because they have cameras and the thing.
Yeah.
So half the people don't pay. And then, like you said, it can only go with the flow of traffic. And if there's a car that decides to park in an area that's going to block the track, guess what you're not doing? You're not going. You're stuck. So what sense does this make?
When you can walk faster to places than the queue line, it's a terrible disaster.
It's not good.
All right, great podcast, sir. Thanks to Nic Manion, 4th place finisher, World Series of Poker, for joining us. Thank him so much.
Thanks, Nick, for being my first millionaire I ever get to talk to.
You talk to a millionaire, and man, that'd be someday where you're just kind of constantly checking your bank account and waiting for that wire to come through. Oh my goodness, good stuff, sir.
What do you do when you open it up and it says like
$2.7 million?
Yeah, whatever it is.
I go, you know what? Let's hit the tables. Let's get back at it.
Let's get back at it.
Let's get back at it.
Get back on that horse, baby.
Yeah, Joe Cadda did right away. Won another tournament.
Yeah, that's true.
All right, sir. For the Jock, Adam Strozinski, I am the Doc, John Macaroon. You've listened to another episode of the Doc and Jock podcast. Shout out to all the supporters. We love it. Thank you so much.
This was locker room talk.
Second deck.
Sorry, Detroit. Didn't quite work out.
And all I can say is Detroit Sports Podcast scores.
I hear voices in my head. They counsel me. They understand. They talk to me. They talk to me.